and welcome back to Real Estate Live UK's first 2022 event. As background, our programmes of virtual panels and presentations take place 3 times a year and are brought to you by White Label and our partners. And we'd like to thank all the organisations that have contributed to the brilliant panels we have taking place this week. This week, places across the UK are showcasing investment opportunities, and industry experts will be exploring ideas and topical issues relating to property. Several of the conversations this week are also linked to our themes for the February programme: sustainability and biodiversity, inclusive communities, and future infrastructure. You can view the full programme of sessions taking place and register for any others that are of interest by visiting our website, realestatelive.co.uk. Next up this morning, we have a discussion that asks, how can the next generation help plan the places of the future? Just before we start that discussion, I'd like to remind you, the audience, to please feel free to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature. And now I'm pleased to hand over to our chair for this session, Jackie Sadek, Chief Operating Officer at UK Regeneration. Over to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Bonnie, and welcome all of you who have registered for today's session. And I think technically I can say now, good afternoon. And I have to say we've had a huge amount of interest in this session today, so we're clearly in the zeitgeist on it, and I'm delighted to be able to chair this brilliant panel. It really is a very luminous and glittery panel I'm about to introduce you to. But just to try and unpack the subject matter in the first instance, we as an industry, the property industry, is not great at listening at the best of times, and we're really pretty poor at listening to young people and the next generation. And quite a lot of us are very concerned about this, obviously, and the interest we've had today reflects that. Now, almost all towns, cities and places in the UK are now undergoing regeneration. A lot of them are trying to slot into the levelling up agenda. And we would like to ask today, in the next hour, and goodness, we've got an awful lot to unpack in this hour, how can the real estate and planning industries ensure that we are building places that are fit for purpose, that the next generation is going to, and the one after is going to thank us for? What are we doing to make sure that the voices of the next generation are heard in the decision-making process? We've all had experience of going into dusty church halls and finding them all full of pensioners. You know, how on earth do we get to the youngsters and get to hear the people who will be using these places in the years to come? How can we encourage people, young people, into our industry in the first place? We all know that we've got an ageing industry. We've certainly got an ageing industry. Certainly in the construction industry, we've got a real problem with ageing operatives and people retiring from construction and not being replaced. How can we make our industry attractive to, and a place where young people want to come? And how, most importantly, do we get young people to have a real say in the development plans for their local areas? And how do we so allow them to have a stake in those local areas that they want to stay in them? And that, of course, again, chimes with the levelling up agenda. And what skills and opportunities do we have to try and give young people to help them achieve this? So a huge amount to unpack there. And I'm very thrilled to say a proper expert panel to do it. So you haven't got to listen to me warbling on. You're going to get some proper advice and experience. Isabelle Hease will be going first. She's chair of the BPF Futures Advisory Board. And I think has a day job as well. She'll explain in a minute. Then we go on to Michael Nathan from Future London, who has a huge amount of experience in emerging talent and how to bring people into the property and construction industries from diverse backgrounds. We're then going to go on to a proper worked example. In the case of Marc Barlow, who's going to talk to us about the Liverpool Future Impact Board, so properly doing it on the ground, which of course is all very important. And then Paddy Allen, who will round us up, I think, rather brilliantly. His day job is at Colliers, but he chairs Pathways to Property, who are doing some epic work in this arena. So no pressure, guys, but we are looking for some real moments of truth and illumination from you all. Isabelle, can I ask you to come first, to put your microphone on first and tell us a little bit about BPF Futures Advisory, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, just a quick introduction. I'm Isabelle Hease, as Jackie mentioned. So, I'm chair of BPF Futures Advisory Board, and I also run a prop tech business called Visitor Insights. So, I'm probably the archetypal young professional who's started in a quite challenging side of the real estate industry, and certainly I've been benefiting from a lot of the support that I've been given through the various channels. So. Jackie, a quick question. Would you like me just to introduce BPF Futures, or would you like me to give a bit of my view on, what we're doing to help young professionals as part of that answer?
Can you do both?
Absolutely. So I'll just start by saying that actually it's really, really positive that we're seeing, interest in the industry to sort of start really getting a good grip on the benefit of supporting young professionals and actually the key role that they are going to be playing in the future of real estate. And I think it's important for us to remember that all of us use and we benefit from the built environment, but for a number of years, it's been pretty much the same voices setting the agenda and really controlling that narrative for how we shape places and spaces. But I think we're all very aware that obviously the landscape is changing pretty rapidly. There are a couple of key issues around the urgent need to decarbonise, to address the issue of safety in the public realm and to create inclusive spaces. And I, as well as many others in the industry, really strongly believe that it's going to be the young people in the industry and their beliefs and their abilities to push for and deliver innovation that's really going to address those issues that we're seeing today. I mean, the challenge, and something obviously we'll be discussing today, is to actually make sure that we're elevating, those change makers, supporting junior professionals and actually giving them the confidence to make their voices heard at the very beginning of their careers and actually throughout the development of their position in the real estate industry. And that's hopefully where BPF Futures and actually many other industry networks that are aimed at supporting young professionals come in. Really establishing a network and an environment that supports young and diverse professionals across the industry and develop in their career and actually become really actively involved, not just in real estate during their day jobs, but actually, as an interest from people who actually use the space and have an interest in the future of real estate. So by joining and engaging with BPF Futures or similar programs, young professionals do have the opportunity to access, a combination of networking opportunities, professional development tools, and really get that support to help them in their careers. What we're doing at BPF Futures, however, is really trying to build a program and initiatives that are shaped by a couple of the challenges that we are seeing by young professionals in the industry. The first is something that I know will be touched upon by some of our other panels, but traditionally there's been a very clear route into real estate that means that actually it's been, there's a support in place if you've got a connection or if you've come through, a traditional university and an APC route. That means actually that sometimes new entrants that don't, have established connections or haven't come through that route actually have a bit of a challenge in terms of establishing those connections early on outside of their day job. So something we set up last year at BPF Futures was the Futures Launchpad, which essentially was set up to give young property professionals a platform to learn and develop, but crucially about widening their access, outside of that contingent of people who are in a fortunate position where they can turn to, family and friends who have had similar careers and ask for advice. But those that aren't in that position, and hopefully there will be an increasing number of young professionals who don't come through a traditional route. I think that's really important. The Launchpad is essentially there to facilitate building those relationships, both between young professionals themselves, but also with senior leaders across the industry for a mentoring program that we've put in place. Secondly, there's another vital part of BPF Futures is actually to help provide better opportunities to learn and grow outside of your everyday working life. So we're committed to essentially providing them with tools, and that's through events, through sort of one-on-one support, and through various programs that we've already established and will look to establish in the next 12 months to help them really grow and understand how policy decisions are influencing their everyday life. So a key, key responsibility of the BPF is that connection between real estate and government. But ultimately, the policy direction of today is going to have more and more of an impact on the next generation, and arguably more so on the next generation than the current one. So one of our core focuses at BPF Futures is to, elevate the voices from the junior professionals in the industry and give them that platform to ensure that they can at least contribute views that hopefully will be embedded into policy decisions going forwards, and spark their interest in how legislation can actually affect not just their jobs, but also their everyday lives. Finally, the Futures programme looks to really try and widen the reach of real estate, and that's both from a geographic perspective as well as a background perspective. So to focus on geographically to start with, we're all relatively aware that the property industry has been pretty London centric for a number of years, and the result of that has been that essentially some of the best and the brightest talent in the industry have really sort of generally felt that it's necessary to gravitate towards the capital to build their careers. But I think increasingly, and the pandemic has been a big catalyst to this, there's a combination of affordability and actually investment into other cities outside of the capital that's starting to turn around that regional exodus to London. And I think it's really crucial that we ensure that there are as many roles as there are support opportunities outside of London and in the regions to help us, build an industry that actually looks outside of London and outside of the way that, arguably a lot of London professionals work to really encapsulate the whole of the UK in terms of the decisions we make in the industry and the policy that affects the UK as a whole, not just London.
Isabelle, thank you. You've got us off to a cracking start. It's inspirational stuff, all right. And I have to say I've learned an awful lot. I didn't know the BPF were doing all of this stuff. So it's great news. Michael, we're going to go to you now. Tell us about the Emerging Talent Programme. I think also hugely inspirational, and your work there, please.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so I work at Future London, just to give everyone a bit of an introduction to the organisation if you haven't come across it before. So we're a not-for-profit organisation, and we look to support organisations that both largely support the work across housing, regeneration, urban and economic development, and infrastructure. We work with large employers, small employers, both across public and private sector, and our main areas of work have historically been providing leadership and development programs for the employees of our sponsor member organisations, knowledge work, and cross-sector networking. And Future London's network essentially designed and developed the Emerging Talent Programme that's focused on addressing creating an entry-level talent pool that will come into the sector working in housing regeneration that are exclusively from ethnic minority communities. And it was felt that aspect of the diversity was one to focus on, but albeit a set of pilot and a template for addressing other characteristics of underrepresented groups in the community. It was designed with the input of a steering group and a sounding board, which is made of engaged sort of leaders and managers who recognise the challenge that we face as a sector from not being ethnically diverse. And especially to almost be a counter to Isabelle's points about the challenges of being London-centric, but to maintain a London-centric focus for the initial launch of the programme. You've got a professional workforce that isn't necessarily representative of the community that's having an impact, but also a workforce that is drawing from a historically narrow talent pool, and therefore not benefiting from the width of talent that exists within a diverse community as we found in London. We opened applications last September, and excitingly, we had off the first cohort start work on the 31st of January. So it's been a great sort of time and exciting period to actually see everything coming into play. So all of our recruits are from ethnic minorities, but interestingly and positively, 80% of the cohort are female. and over 75% went to a non-selective state secondary school. And the remaining percentage actually didn't necessarily go to independent schools, but studied outside the UK. So actually, we've got the diversity of the group is multi-layered, which is hopefully going to be a positive opportunity. Future of London we're directly employing recruits for 21 months, but during that time, they're spending all of their time completing 3 secondments, one of 9 months, then 2 of 6 months. Each of those secondments is essentially working within one of our host organisations, who are made up of our sponsor and member organisations who wanted to be involved and support the opportunity. So during each placement, each recruit gets to experience and have an insight into lots of different roles and career paths within the sector, rather than maybe just one or two that may have been the most obvious that they would have heard about before joining the sector. Supporting their experience across 3 different placements, they have a mentor who's an existing professional in the sector who's independent of the organisations they're working in. They're supported with a series of training and development days. We bring the cohort together to support them in developing not just their knowledge and understanding of the sector, but importantly, those crucial workplace behaviours that really will support someone's career, going on beyond and into a senior role. And then we also will have a lot of focus as an organisation to help the individuals secure a role at the end of the 21 months that's a platform to be a successful career, and a role that they've really understood. They've understood it. It fits their preferences and their skill sets. So hopefully it creates a sustainable talent pool that will stay in the sector, develop, and hopefully progress to a point where they are putting back that impact and representing, London's communities in the way that housing regeneration and infrastructure solutions are delivered. The vision is that they're a diverse group of people who will build sustainable careers. And we're really fortunate to have the support of some really engaged organisations, both across public sector and private sector, providing those host organisations. We're now in week 4, and it's going really well. I've had a regular contact with the cohort, and the support they're getting from their employers, but also how they're already starting to make a difference is really great to see. And we're looking forward to kind of continuing their support, but also looking to bring in future cohorts from next year and beyond.
This is superb, isn't it, guys? I mean, it really is superb. Can I ask you specifically, Michael, before we go on to Marc, if there's people who are on the Zooms today who would like to help, can they contact you directly? Is that what's the best thing for them to do?
Yep, no, absolutely. We're keen to kind of talk to organisations, in addition to ones we're already working with. And it's interesting. We have been approached by organisations who've heard about what we're doing in the programme and want to be involved. And I think for me, from a sort of personal background as being a sort of working in the early career space across a number of sectors, what excited me about this opportunity was it's very tangible. It's very focused on delivering a solution for, albeit a small but targeted group, and hopefully it could be a template for addressing this in the future. So very keen to speak to other organisations who are interested in getting involved in any shape or form, and feel free to get in touch.
Well, I think that's excellent, because an awful lot of real estate organisations would like to shift and change in their behaviours and their recruitment and what have you, just don't know how to do it, do they? So this is real tangible support. Thank you. And can I just say to the audience, if you'd like to start, I mean, I know a lot of questions will be springing up as we go through the session. If you'd like to start just filling in the Q&A thing, and the guys will help me try and read it a bit later, and I'll be very happy to take questions after we finish the introductions. But without further ado, let's move on to Marc, because he's actually in a real city and doing real work on the real ground with real people. Marc, tell us all about it.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. So I form one of Liverpool Place Partnership's Future Impact Board, and we support the growth of the city by providing decision makers within the Liverpool City region an alternative and forward-thinking perspective on how the city should grow to make sure that it meets the expectations and needs for all future generations. We act as a bit of a consultant for these key decision makers and these regional leaders by presenting more modernised concepts for them to consider, and by informing them of the ways in which we and our generational cohort, what we want to see be brought forward within the future. And we were created by Liverpool's Place Partnership as they recognised that for the Liverpool City region to continue to thrive in the way that it has done over the last few years, it was critical to hear and listen to the voices of future generations. And I think it's safe to say that in the past, and I think you alluded to this before, Jackie, that that's not always been the case. And there's been a bit of a missed opportunity there. And unfortunately, this led to a bit of a void between decision makers and those that will live through and be most affected by these policy changes. However, now, we and my age group, we are the next generation that's going to be most affected by these changes. And for that reason alone, we deserve a say in the city region's future direction and its narrative, and in the areas that matter the most to us. And so to ensure this, we challenge and we question whether in reality there is affordable homes for people wanting to buy the first home, whether there is plenty of job opportunities for aspiring graduates in this competitive job market, whether there is a sustainable and thriving local and national economy. And if there isn't, consider and question whether the policies and the agendas that are brought forward, do they really and truly represent us and what we want to see as part of the city region? I think our advocacy for change has already been, as the Future Impact Board has already been recognised. We've been part of and held discussions with senior advisors regarding future investment in the city and spatial planning policies. And we've already consulted on a variety of number of new developments coming into the city region and in the pipeline. There are values already being seen across the city. And following these conversations, it's really strengthened our approach. And we've got really specific targeted areas that we want to help improve, such as rectifying the skills gap, and ensuring a social and sustainable social value for all, utilising innovation and best practices such as modern methods of construction, and building a climate change resilience. And ultimately, we hope to act as a bit of a model for other city regions and other businesses to identify the value of early engagement with young professionals, in the hope that provides growth and economic benefits to the city regions or to the businesses, and to showcase that despite our age, we do have the necessary skills and experiences to make influential decisions on a local, national and international scale.
I am loving it because it's so demonstrably adding value, isn't it? And I just think you are so to be commended with this work, Marc. So congratulations. So without further ado, last but by no means least, I'm going to come to Paddy, who chairs Pathways to Property and I think has already put 1,000 young people through a programme, and he's going to tell us all about that. Paddy, over to you.
Thanks, Jackie, and great to hear everyone else's backgrounds as well. I think we overlap quite a bit in various different areas, if anything, just what we're trying to achieve. Just to give everyone a bit of background about Pathways, I guess we started about 10 years ago. We're approaching our 10th year, and the objective of Pathways is to really increase the levels of representation and inclusivity across the real estate industry, trying to highlight all the different pathways into a career in real estate, and I suppose educate young people on what it means to come into real estate. We target kind of, I guess, the kids at kind of 15, 16, just as they're kind of about to probably do their GCSEs in schools, and then when they're looking to go on to A levels, and wanting to get a bit more of an understanding about what the world is. There's lots of jargon in the real estate industry that we use to sound clever, I think, and we try and demystify some of that as well. So that it's really clear to the kids what we do. If you ask any of them what's it like to work in property, they all think we're probably Phil Spencer and Kirsty Allsop, I think, most of the time, or we work for Foxtons, and that's about it. That's sort of where it stops. And there is an absolute multitude of professions within the industry, from whether it's engineering, design, customer service, marketing, and general surveying routes as well. What we do at Pathways is we run an annual summer school, which is hosted by the University of Reading, to give young people, and we take 100 young people through most years, and it really gives them a kind of insight into what the real estate industry is, what we mean by it, what their kind of careers are, what it's like to study away from home. Again, a lot of the young people we work with haven't got parents or people within their kind of inner circle who have gone off into the sector, so they don't really, there's no pathway for them to understand. They may more often than not have parents who haven't gone into higher education. They may often, a lot of the young people we work with are first generation migrants to the country as well. So, their parents don't really understand, what it's like to kind of forge a career here in the UK as well. So, what we try and do is give people their own pathways and so that they can forge their own ideas and then forge their own relationships as well. One of the key things that we do is let them meet people in the industry at all levels, so their peers, but also all the way up to kind of CEO level, so that they can see all the different types of people. The way that we really try and be effective is by making sure that the young people can kind of see people that look like them and hear people that sound like them, and that they can have those kind of role models, because that's what's kind of sort of lacking, I guess, in a way for them. They see people in the industry and go, well, I don't sound like that guy and I don't look like him. I can't work out how I get there, so it's just not a concept that I'm going to even explore. Away from the summer school, we provide an ongoing, we're a bit of a family, really. I think once you're in, you're kind of in, and you can take as much as you want. We offer work experience placements, mentoring relationships, online support and learning through what we call an OOC, so an open online course, which I think we've had over 20,000 people through that. And then there's the whole kind of financial side of it as well. We offer bursaries to anyone who wants to go off and to study real estate at any university. They can get a full bursary to cover all of their costs. To come on the summer school, we'll cover everyone's travel costs. So costs and finance shouldn't be a barrier to coming on this sort of journey with us. So we're very cognizant of that. If people need to buy ties and smart trousers, we'll do that as well. Again, we don't want those little things to be barriers to coming into the industry. Our challenge really going forward, and I'm just working with the board at the moment on this and looking at what we've done over the last 10 years and what we do for the next 10 years, is to take those young people and make sure we don't forget them. And I think, I've had everyone sort of mention this, is that it's not just about sort of raising them up and saying, here we go. It's about providing that kind of support and nurturing all the way through. If we're going to get more representation at board level and we're going to get more people to be heard at decision-making level, we can't forget them in the middle once they've got into the industry. That's one of the biggest sort of challenges for us, is to, we get people into the industry, they go on a grad scheme, and then they realise that all the decision makers in their company come from one demographic and they've got no chance of being heard. That's one of the crucial sort of points in the careers where they need that support, those mentoring relationships, those sounding boards, to really kind of go through and say, right, how do I start to break down some of these barriers? So, we're always growing, we're always pivoting. The first summer school we did was all about academia and like telling them what real estate is. The summer school now is actually a lot more about soft skills and confidence, building confidence, being able to present yourself, being able to make sort of reasoned decisions, how to put your CVs together, how to go and talk to people, how to approach people, how to listen, right? Because I think, we talk about the real estate industry is not great at listening, but it's also important that the young people coming through understand how to listen as well, and to then formulate their own opinions and how to get those across. So we want to give people the skills and the ability to sort of do that. So lots done, but still lots to do. But really excited to be here today. So thank you for inviting me to ramble with you.
Well, thank you for the ramble. We loved it. And just to ask really the same question as I asked Michael, if folk want to get involved, if there's industry representatives here who come from organisations that like to get involved, they come to you directly, Paddy? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, come to me. I'm sort of on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way. I can connect you into the Pathways team. We've got a fantastic team that runs it day to day. So we're very keen to get as many people involved as we can.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to go over to the Q&A now, and we've had some really interesting questions come in, along with a very shameless plug from the great Neil Webster, the indefatigable Neil Webster for the Association of Chief Estate Surveyors, which is all the guys who run the property parts of local authorities. And ACEs are doing some great work in this arena. So we're very glad you're in the seminar, Neil, but you can shut up now. Moving on to the questions then. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just read out all four that are here because they're pretty good. And I like them. And I'm going to then go to the panel and say pick up all or as many or as few as you like, really. So it's over to you guys in a minute. But Michael, I'm going to come to you first, just to put you on notice. First question is, do the panel have any advice on recruitment? This is an excellent question. What works best, blind recruitment or particular agencies? And I think we can get onto that one and really dissect that one. This is a particular one for Marc. How do you think developers can better engage with the place's young population on new schemes? It's often hard to get in touch. Do you have any thoughts? Well, I think you're going to have a lot of thoughts on that, Marc, aren't you? And then moving along, it's so refreshing to see a panel about the future generation properly represented with a young person on the panel. I think we've got at least 2, possibly 3 young people on the panel. I can only apologise and lament the age of the chair. I can only apologise for that. Marc, how can we encourage other businesses to put forward their young colleagues? I think it's a really good question. And then finally, from Neil Webster, who is just will not shut up. How can we align all of the various initiatives across the country? It's an excellent question, Neil. Those on the session, plus MOBI, RICS, ACES, Accelerate, etc. And I think, Isabelle, I'm going to be looking to you to pick up that one, if you wouldn't mind, and forgive me for that. Michael, let's come to you first then. Which of those do you want to respond to, if any, or do you want to say something completely different?
I'll have a go at the recruitment one, having sort of been involved and working on the managing the recruitment for the Emerging Talent Programme. But to focus on the question, I think it's about looking at the different levels of experience you're looking at to bring into the sector or otherwise. So if I can maybe focus on my area of experience, which is more people at the start of their careers. I do think, if you're not targeting a specific group, therefore the only applicants you're getting from that group, well, I do think tactics such as blind recruitment do have an impact. And you've got to sort of make sure you can remove the whatever could be indirectly unfair to someone who is from an underrepresented group. So I definitely would support blind recruitment, but I also think to use the experience of Future London, it's about that sort of proportional targeting of the group you're looking or groups you're looking to represent. And I think this is a bit of a step forward maybe in our culture as kind of corporate, institutional thinking in the UK that may have been more established in other developed economies, where actually you're saying, this is the community, it's made up of this, and yet we're not picking from the community. Therefore, how can we sort of target a group and make sure there is a proportionate level of opportunity for people in that group, and you still set the same sort of benchmarks around that. I think at a more experienced level, it is about looking at the networks that have really grown, both inside organisations looking to support and bring together people from underrepresented groups, but there are quite a few pan-industry sort of networks that are looking to support people from a certain group. So female professionals or people from ethnic minority backgrounds, LGBTQ+. And I think it's about engaging with those organisations and being open and being really tangible. So look, we want to engage, and being ready for it to be a bit of a journey, that you start to learn internally what actually is it about your organisation that hasn't been attractive or welcoming to people from underrepresented groups, and then looking to see what you can improve. But got to go out and speak to people from the groups you're trying to represent, and then actually, to your point earlier, Jackie, as we're starting to do, listen to people to understand what is it about your organisation that's not bringing people in. And the other thing is, where you have people from the represented groups in your organisation, listen to them. I think we made the point earlier, I think Paddy made the point that people join organisations group and having a great experience that's shown them the positivity of joining an organisation. But actually, once they're there, they don't see it. So an example is a statistic from the Institute of Student Employers Black Career Matters report that was released last October that's looking at employees from all sectors, not just the built environment. 86% of the employees survey said, we've got a problem with not having enough ethnic diversity, specifically from Black people coming into our graduate schemes or apprenticeship schemes. And yet only 30% of those organisations have a scheme that supports people from those underrepresented groups once they're in the organisation. So we've got to plug that gap. And actually, it may not be as much of a recruitment issue as much as looking at your own talent pool and understanding why they're not progressing and what barriers may be in place that are unfair and not inclusive.
Brilliant. Marc, I'm going to come to you now. And Paddy, just put you on notice. I'm going to come to you next, if you wouldn't mind. Marc, you got quite a lot of mentions in the questions there.
I know. But I think in relation to how do you think developers can better engage with places young population on new schemes. I think it'd be like utilising better forms of communication to reach out to our new generation now. We use and communicate differently. So our responses and how we listen is different. I think that's the best way for developers to engage properly. And ultimately, all of our experiences will help construct the ways in which that we want to see the future being built. So it's really, really important for all those developers to engage properly. And I think by having other youth boards and something similar to what we have in the Liverpool City region, it helps bridge that gap between developers and people that are most affected by it, because we act as like a bit of a sounding board for these developers to integrate policies which matter the most to us. So I think just better forms of communication, really. And the third point about how can we encourage other businesses to put forward their younger colleagues as the voice of the future? I think that particular question sounds like as if like the businesses need justification to do it, when I don't think you need to. I think it's all about being brave. And I think it's about, I'm one of 9 people who've been put forward as part of my board, and we were put forward by our businesses who took the step and recognised the benefit in the value that young professionals can bring. So I don't think there's a way, I don't think there's a how. It's just like, why aren't you doing it now, and be brave and make it happen, because there are a lot of benefits that come from that.
It's not just about being brave, is it? It's about understanding the value that can be added. I mean, it's a necessary thing, I think. And well, we'll come back to this, I'm sure. Paddy, what do you want to pick up from that wonderful clutch of questions?
Well, I mean, they're all directed at Marc, so he's the key member of the band here. But I'll pick up the recruitment one, and just to build on what Michael was saying. I think, from my perspective, businesses have to care first. They have to kind of, excuse my language, give a shit before they can kind of put any kind of change in place. If it's just something that's kind of the board wants to do, and they put it in a PDF that goes on the website, and it's not actually filtered down through businesses in their behaviours and actions and values, and the leaders in the business aren't living by example, then these things, it doesn't matter whether you've got blind recruitment using different agencies, it will all sort of fall on its face, because nobody really cares. And the actions and the work and the output that's being done, by those businesses will not reflect those values. So I'm quite big on, and I think, just looking at the list here, I've got participants, I think some of my team are in here, and they know when I've been recruiting, I recruit on a kind of values basis. I'm not really interested in kind of where you've been, what you've done, what you kind of know. It doesn't really, that's interesting, it helps, but really I want to know what people's values are, and what they bring to the table from a perspective view, and and how do they articulate that, and also how can I work with them to make them better in certain areas and things like that, by having a slightly different view in terms of the kind of people that I'm trying to bring in, rather than trying to say I want people to all have this qualification, because whether it's let's say I need everyone to be from Oxbridge, then right, we're screwed, right? We're only going to get a certain kind of caliber of candidate. If I say people need to all have a CFA, accounting qualification, then I know how hard that is to get on there and how hard that is to get through. And, I'm already setting these barriers. So on one hand, I'm saying, I really want a diverse and inclusive team. On the other hand, I'm saying, but you've got to meet all these criteria, which are only open to other people. So the whole thing has to kind of come together. And I'll give you one really short example. I mean, I've been involved in, and this wasn't in my time at Colliers. Colliers are very good at what, at this, I believe. But I was looking at recruiting graduates, and on one hand we had the kind of this is what we want to achieve at the board level, but the recruitment process was evaluated on a completely different basis, and we had people who weren't ever going to get through that recruitment process, because the way you got through was by being polished. Now, we had one guy on there who I thought was amazing. He'd come over from the UK, I think from Afghanistan. He'd got himself a bursary to study at university. He was looking after 2 younger siblings. He was a deputy manager in Tesco's, and he'd done all of this time, and he was there. But he didn't, his tie was a bit askew, his English was a bit broken. But my God, I tell you what, I would have had him in my team all day long, because the desire that guy had to work hard and be there and to learn was exactly what we wanted. But he didn't get through the process because he wasn't really very polished. And that's what we were recruiting on. So the recruitment piece was, we was already failing at that level. So, that's got nothing to do. Agencies can bring people, blind recruitment can kind of get you there, but actually how are we assessing these people? What, how is that filtering through the business is really important.
Again, very inspirational stuff, Paddy, and I think Isabelle liked an awful lot of it by the looks of her body language. And Isabelle, can I come to you, please, particularly on this this question of joining up all the different initiatives? Your thoughts on that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just from the BPF Future side of things, so all BPF member companies essentially have access to the Futures membership for free, but we do appreciate that we want to widen our remit and really include people who are at the outset of their careers and don't necessarily have a business that they can join the Futures through, and then similarly actually ensure that we have a reach that covers people who don't necessarily work for a business that sits under the BPF membership. So we've tried to make it very affordable. So anybody who'd like to join, I believe it's £35 a year. And that means that essentially you get free access to everything that the BPF Futures membership offers you. So that's mentoring, that's all of the events, that's networking sessions, that's our sort of hopefully soon to be launched networking drinks and face-to-face events. And I believe that other networks have similar pricing structures as well, and initiatives that help support you gain access to this type of network, even if your business is not part of BPF or you don't actually work for a property company yet, or in your current role.
Well, I've got an idea, okay, and it was sort of sparked by Neil Webster's question, really, and I'm just wondering whether I should get the EG, and if the EG won't do it, I'll get Property Week to pull a lunch together. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm an old lag in the property industry, and my answer to everything is lunch. I can only apologise for that, but I would think it'd be quite effective to get all of you on the panel here into a room with ACES, with Moby, with Real Estate Balance, with young entrepreneurs in property, with Freeform, and get us all around the table talking about getting young people into the industry and getting a bit of a PR splash on it. Anyway, I'll put that out there just as an idea. It's something I could probably twist the arm around somebody to do, but I think it'd be well worth doing.
Jackie, I think it's a great idea, but I think we'll take it one step further and actually let's get young people in the room as well. So that we can because I think that for me, we one of the things we did as a board, when we in our early days, was that we sat there and we all came up with the solution in our own heads. It was just like we didn't actually engage with any teachers or young people. Why would we do that?
I couldn't agree more. But do remember that the people who run our industry are all the old gimmers, like people like me. But we need to do exactly that. Anyway, brilliant, all brilliant. This sparked a lot of thinking. Right, on to the questions then. Esther's asking, when it comes to widening the public engagement process surrounding placemaking decisions, do the panel have any best or worst case examples of attempts to actively recruit young people? Marc, I'm going to come to you first in a moment. And here's another question, which is obviously directed to Paddy, but I think anybody can have a pop at it. Is there anything similar to Pathways to Property for students with a first degree at say, about 22 years old? I get the sense that one's a bit self-interested, but no harm in that at all. Marc, what do you think about Esther's question? Widening public engagement. Sorry, I think Marc's frozen on us there. Paddy, I'm going to come to you if I may, while we see if Marc can get his Wi-Fi up again.
Yeah, no worries. So similar stuff to Pathways. I think there probably is. It's a little bit less structured, but there's certainly no reason why somebody with a degree in anything at 22 years old shouldn't be able to find their way into the industry. I think to build on what Isabelle was saying, there are lots of groups that people can kind of be a part of and get a part of, I think. And if anything, a lot of the recruitment process is being run by the big the consulting firms at the moment are actually, I guess, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but they're positively discriminating away from people with real estate degrees and kind of what they call kind of non-cognate degrees. So, you know, wanting to get people into the industry who have a degree in something completely different from real estate. So, and actually that's opened up to, you know, anyone from 22 years old plus, really. You know, we see quite a few people who are changing careers, you know, they've done something for 4 or 5 years, even something for 10 years, to be honest with you, and coming in. And I quite like those people. I think it's a great challenge for perspective from us, you know, seeing how other industries have done it and how other people have, you know, why they've joined an industry. You know, I think there's this weird kind of thing that you've got to have started right from the beginning and done your training. I get it if you're a doctor, right? Nobody wants to be treated by a doctor who's not done the training, but you know, it's in our industry, actually, it's all about perspective. And if you've done whatever, right? I don't care whether I mean, I spent 5 years working for Pizza Hut and I managed pizza restaurants, and it's given me a great insight into the job I do now, in terms of actually caring about customers and customer service. So, you know, there should never be a barrier. And, you know, it's just about your willingness to get out there and put yourself in front of people.
You know, you're a total credit to Colliers. You really are a total credit. Marc, what do you... I'm sorry, we've lost
I'll give you my boss's email.
We've lost him completely. It's a tragedy. I hope we get him back again, but it was great to have him. Well, we had him at least. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, really, just to echo what Paddy said, you know, in a former life, managing, you know, early careers recruitment, that's exactly the sort of position we were able to take for a good number of the roles in the organisation, where historically there'd been... and I'm going to use the word, you know, a bias towards specific degrees and specific sort of experiences even. And actually the ability and the openness of the organisation, you know, in a lot of areas, to be open to people with a degree of any background and actually base the recruitment on behaviours, attitudes and mindset. What that led to was kind of what we've been talking about, increased diversity and certainly gender. If you look at a sector that certainly maybe isn't as gender diverse as it could have been, the mere fact, if you look at the demographics of university, you know, students, you know, higher education statistics agency, the majority slightly are female, but they're unfortunately not doing subjects that are cognate, to use Paddy's word. And that goes back to some of the work like, you know, pathways properties is an excellent example. We need more of that, you know, further upstream. We need to be educating people of all, you know, students at secondary school about all the different opportunities in the sector, and certainly for underrepresented groups. You know, it's not just medicine, law, and finance that can give you great careers in this economy. But once you've got, you know, that will take a long time to address. Once you've got people at university, the majority are not studying cognate degrees, and yet they are there, and there is talent there from many demographics. And organisations that have taken that degree subject barrier down will see and are seeing the benefits of a more diverse intake, and therefore a more diverse set of skills, and all the benefits that Paddy's eloquently spoke about.
Thank you, Michael. Thrilled to see Marc back on the call. Fantastic to see you, love. Before I come to you, let me just bring in Isabelle, because we're in the middle of a train of thought. You can collect yourself and come in at the end if you wouldn't mind.
Thanks.
Isabelle.
Oh, sorry, Jackie. Can you just repeat that? I've lost connection.
I just said over to you, Isabelle. Really, I didn't say anything. No words of wisdom there.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Yeah, I mean, just you know, from my perspective, probably a lot of the points have been answered by the other panelists, but you know, I think it's really important that we enable a really wide, you know, reaching opportunity to bring more voices on board and actually support their development and really help businesses. And I think there is a bit of an educational piece there, you know, help businesses appreciate the value that not just a diverse but a young workforce can really bring both their business, but, you know, as I keep saying, to that sort of general, you know, built environment, so that we can try and, you know, hedge against some of the challenges that we have seen, which may or may not have been, but I think arguably in part have been as a result of a bit of a misalignment between some of the industry leaders and an understanding of what's required from places and spaces to ensure, future sustainability of, our towns, cities, retail locations, residential developments of the future.
So it comes back again to this point about demonstrating value, which I think Marc very brilliantly unpacked in his opening session. So Marc, over to you. Got any tips as to how you do this?
Well, my experience with identifying value with young professionals was I work in Curtins consultant, and I've been part of an internal initiative called the Reverse Mentoring Programme. As part of this, I was partnered up with a senior colleague within the business, and the idea of that was that the senior colleague would learn from ideas and beliefs and concepts from me to help shape the business for the future, so that was aligned with the needs and expectations of what we want to see moving forward. And I think that sort of structure can be widely implemented across different businesses. And I just knew that my experience with the Future Impact Board that's already starting to manifest. We've been part of conversations now regarding upcoming developments, and people have asked us our opinion on what we want to see, whether that be ensuring diversity and inclusion, whether it was plentiful jobs, and making sure that we've got designs fit for the future, mainly regarding sustainability and using more optimal construction methods. And I think it just provides the future generation then the next set of skills that they can use. So it gives them an opportunity to skill up and diversify the workforce in the future.
The old guard have to understand how they can benefit from the luminosity of youth, don't they? I mean, and I think there is a gap there, and I don't think it is being met. Now, we've got 8 minutes left, and we will have to finish on time. Just to say to everybody, this will be broadcast later by White Label Creative on YouTube. And I have to say, my hat is off to the Real Estate Live team for putting together such a brilliant programme. But I want to ask the downside question now, if I may, and I'm going to come to all four of you on this, and I'm going to start with you, Paddy, right? And the downside question, I think, is this. What are the risks? What are the risks to the property sector if it doesn't successfully engage with the next generation of talent and customers? I mean, there is a significant downside. We've all talked about the demonstrable value. Marc, I have to say, has unpacked it brilliantly for us. But what are the risks if we don't do this? Paddy?
From my perspective, the risks, we become irrelevant, right? Businesses become irrelevant. Properties, placemaking becomes irrelevant, because you haven't taken into account the stakeholders' interests, essentially. So we go back to where we got to in the 60s in urban planning and development, where we developed these crazy places that, only really were in the mind of a planner or a developer and didn't really fit for weren't fit for purpose. And I look at, white elephant type shopping centres, developments in the City of London, in the 60s and 70s, developments in the City of London were they built up one level, right? You've seen these kind of massive office buildings that you don't know how you get into. It's like nobody actually thought about how anyone enters a building, and how people, use it. So that's a kind of really crude example. But I think, we just run the risk of kind of self-congratulating ourselves at decision maker level, and congratulating ourselves on kind of group think and just forgetting about who's actually going to use these buildings? How are they going to engage with these buildings? Are we building for what people want? I see it we talk about this in the residential sector, and there's lots of premium residential being built, which there is a market for, but there's also markets at the mid-level and at affordable level. And so, if we're not raising that in big sort of forums and decision-making forums, then it becomes sort of slightly forgotten. So, if we want to make places that are sticky in the long term and are successful, we have to have that we have to engage with people with lots of different perspectives. And that's not just background, that's age, that's gender, that's everything.
I heard this great term the other day, stranded assets. I think you've just talked about stranded assets, stuff that we're building that we're going to have to expensively retrofit later, and that it's not fit for future generations, and it isn't, I understand we've built 1 million homes in the last few years that will have to be retrofitted on zero carbon. I mean, it's scandalous really what we're up to. Enough of my warbling. Isabelle, I'm going to come to you next. I'm then going to go to Marc, and I'm going to give the last word to Michael, if I may. So Isabelle, you now.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to build on what Paddy said, in my view, the risks of us not adopting, the views of the younger generation is quite simply going to be erosion of asset value. As Paddy really eloquently put it, if you don't build for the future, you will have challenges again in 10, 15, 20 years' time to reposition your built environment to align with the future needs. You'll have very inflexible, illiquid real estate that is incredibly hard and expensive to repurpose or redevelop. But I think, another challenge is also, and actually this is one of the big focuses of the BPF itself, is actually just improving and realigning perception of the real estate industry. If we continue to remove that younger generation from the decision-making process that will ultimately dictate what their built environment looks like in the future, you continue that sort of negative perception of the real estate industry, to the general public. I think increasingly as people become a lot more aware of what they're looking for in terms of a service or where they live, there is certainly that risk of some of the sort of larger real estate businesses sort of falling into the traps of being viewed pretty negatively by the general population, and all the challenges and issues that arise from a continuing sort of negative view and misalignment of people's views on the property sector, which actually arguably there should be a positive relationship between the buildings that you live in and the businesses that own them, and the way that you use and you engage with those spaces. But at the moment, I would argue there probably isn't, and we're at risk of making it worse.
Well, Isabelle, I'm so glad we're all so glad you're doing this work, really. We really are. Marc, I'm going to come to you, and I'm just going to chuck in a question that's just come in at the last knockings here. Is there also a risk of all the major property sector businesses of today getting cancelled, which I think is rather a clever way of putting it? I mean, irrelevant. If we become irrelevant, do we become obsolete? Is this how it's going to work if we don't do this work?
I think there definitely is an argument for that. I think there was a quite an interesting report by Marc Farmer, which was government-led, called, and it was very crudely titled "Modernize or Die," and it was basically like all the recommendations that have been identified for the property and construction industry to take forward. Otherwise, our services will become stagnant, and it will force young professionals who have graduated university with transferable skills, and they'll just go elsewhere. So I think there definitely is a risk, ultimately, that it could become a bit of a cancelled culture with it, because people won't want to work for or work in industries that don't truly represent them and aren't getting the output that they want to see. So I think Absolutely. That's why the biggest risk is definitely
and Marc's report,
disengagement with the wrong.
Sorry, Marc, we're losing you a bit there. Just to say, Marc Farmer's report was "Modernize or Die," full stop. It wasn't "Modernize or Die?" ? That was quite deliberate on Marc's part, and he was absolutely right about that. Sorry, Marc, you were coming and going a bit for us there, but I think we got the gist. Michael, the very last word to you, my love. What are the risks if we don't do this work, if we don't embrace this work, if we don't run with this agenda? What are the risks to us?
If the built environment isn't delivered effectively by the new generation to make it fit for purpose of future generations, then society is just not getting the benefits of a positive environment. I see if you look at schools design, there's a lot of work that's done to improve schools. And what did it do? It improved achievement and attainment and experience. So you take that to every aspect of the environment, that's the cost. If I bring it back to maybe more my areas of the talent side, other sectors will get that talent, and a critical part of the UK economy in every shape or form will just stagnate and shrink. And that will have huge societal impact. That an economy, a petrol economy that's crucial for the growth of the economy in the UK, but also a massive export for the UK economy, will not have the talent representing the community, because that community will go to other areas to develop their careers. And actually, as the UK, with such a strength that we've had, given that we need to maintain our premium skills that we can export worldwide, given what's happening with potential impacts of Brexit, it's a short-term and medium-term cost as much as a long-term challenge. And you take into account net zero and all those things that we all need to address as a society. We don't have the talent in this sector. We're not going to be able to make the impact on these things that are not just critical for the sector, but potentially for the wider economy and community as well.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Brilliant note on which to end. Can I thank all of you? The panel have been you've been absolutely inspirational, I think it's fair to say. And can I thank all of those who participated and for all the ideas and questions that we've had in the chat. This will, I think, Bonnie, it's fair to say it will be recorded. This will be available on YouTube. And I think this has been a massive contribution to what is a really important part of our debate going forward. Thank you to all of you.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Absolutely echo what you say. Thank you so much to the panel for a great discussion this afternoon. So powerful and such an important conversation with some really good suggestions and challenges raised, which is what we were looking for. So really appreciate the panel's time, and we'll absolutely look to continue this discussion in our future programmes. Perhaps we can also pick up on Neil's point about coordinating groups across the UK. So we'll pick up on that after the session. But yes, before we end, just a quick note to the audience about Real Estate Live UK. There's still more to come this week. At 2 p.m, we have a discussion about London's thriving life sciences sector, and tomorrow we'll be hosting panels on sustainable stadiums, the forward-thinking regeneration of North Finchley, and future high streets and what will make those successful, the S in ESG and biodiversity in garden developments. And Jackie will be kindly joining us again for our closing keynote session on levelling up. So lots more to look forward to over the next couple of days, and you can book onto those on the website. So yeah, thank you all again so much for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Bye.